remember that that person on the street that we meet, that we don't know their name, we don't know nothing about them. But when we see them, the same thing. You go out to eat lobster, you feed them lobster. You go out to...
So if I could make a proclamation now, so from now on, whenever we going out to eat, then we need to go to McDonald's from McDonald's. So like whatever we eat. Because you wanted to give them the whole lobster.
But Jesus really took my place, he bore it all.
We're talking about love exalted being the gospel. That which we exalt above others, and that's the good news, right? So the good news. And we looked at some stuff last week talking about like what love is, and talking about the fight that the human, or the struggle the human mind has, whether to love or whether to do evil. Talk about what the gospel is. And now we're actually looking at the first commandment. And we talked about love being the highest priority. I think we went over that last week, didn't we? The greatest commandment that was asked. We did that. Yeah. And that there had been those guiding principles, and that it was the fulfillment of the law. That's why I thought that we were on slide number 7. So the first commandment continued. Look at what it says in James chapter 2 and verse 8. So James 2 and 8. So if you really fulfill the royal law, what's the royal law? Because then that's the next sentence.
Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
Ooh.
Will.
Right. So that's the royal law, right? Now, royal law means now that it actually must be coming from a king for it to be royal, right? And who is the King of Kings?
Christ.
Christ himself. So that's a royal law, because it was Jesus who says, by this, what? All men shall know that you are my disciples if you do what? If you have love one for another, right? If you love one another, just how should you love one another? For the world to know that you are his disciples. He already told us in the very same verse. He gave us the criteria. If you love like I have loved you. So it ain't just a wishy-washy type of love, like, you know what, I kind of love you today, or I like you today, or you do something to me tomorrow and I don't like you tomorrow. No, it's just love in spite of. Agape love, right? All right, so that's the royal law coming from royalty himself. And so Hebrews 10 and 24, a lot of times we love to go back to Hebrews 10 and 25 about not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together. But how can we not forsake the assembling of ourselves together? Because before we get to 25, we got to go through verse 24. Correct? So what does it say in verse 24 then?
Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works.
All right. So that is to provoke one another to love and good works. So if you continue to encourage one another to love and good works, assembling yourselves together is a good work. And so when you provoke one another, encourage one another, that should possibly be one of the things that we should be encouraging one another on. What do you think? Attendance.
Do you have one?
The importance of gathering together, learning from one another, edifying one another. You think that would be important? All right. Now, Galatians 5 and 6 let us know something that tells us here, right, that our outward expression, what would that do? It will confirm what's on the inside. It is what's on the inside that actually comes out on the outside. What did Jesus say? It's not what goes into the person that defiles them, right? Right, so how do I know if you love me if you don't show me love? How would I know that you're a kind person if you don't do kind deeds? I can't tell. So I can only tell and evaluate you based on your outward actions. Don't tell me what you think. You know how people say what? Don't tell, what is it? How do you say? How the saying goes?
Not what you say, what you do.
Well, that too, but it's one of the things that says like, what is it? It's, what? They don't care how much you,
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
they don't care what you got to say. They care how you make them feel.
Right. It's something to that effect. Right. So don't, anyway, it'll come to me. That's a part of the aging process. Yeah. No, it's not that. It's like, don't tell them how much you care until you, does it?
You know what to say, what to do.
No, and we all say the same thing. But I was trying to look for the exact phraseology. But anyway, you got the point. That's the point, right? Now, if you look at your next bullet, it's telling you that the church is to be God's example of what? Love, right? We are the people, and he says that if the world is going to know that you're mine, if you have love one for another. So if the world wants to know what love looks like, then who should the world be looking to for love, or that example of what love looks like? It ain't right. It ain't going to be, let me go down here to this particular agency and show how much they love, right? And so if we are not showing love, and what we're actually doing is showing the world how much we can fight with one another and destroy one another, then what do you think the world will think of us? That we're Christians? No? That's why sometimes they say, and you, let me tell you, the world knows. The world is quick to say, and you call yourself a
Christian?
right.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Have you ever been confronted?
Yeah.
And you call yourself a what? Because you didn't show me some love. So they gonna test us. But in every situation that we find ourselves, that's why the Bible lets us know that whatever we are doing, in word or deed, we got to do all to the glory of God. And every opportunity that we find ourselves in to do good, do it. You never know who's watching. And you never know who's evaluating you. Right? Okay, so let's jump over to your next slide. And actually contrast some things here. It's not really a contrast, it's actually showing how the apostles were actually looking at love. Conduct of love. Look at John's teaching on love. So these are all passages out of the book of John as to love. John 15 and 12.
This is my commandment, that you love one another.
Whose commandment? Right. Because it says, if it's in red, who's talking?
Right.
All right, so if it's in red, Jesus is talking. So this is my commandment that you,
Love one another.
how much?
As I have loved.
All right, so that's what John says. And John was there. You weren't there, right? John was there. And so John says, this is what I heard him say. All right, and so we got that. Look over there to John 13 and 35. We were just talking about it.
By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples
What's that? By what?
if you have love for one another.
But again, we always talk about easier said than done, right? Because the minute someone rubs us the wrong way, what do we want to do? A lot of times you get rubbed the wrong way, it ain't Jesus that's actually coming to the front first. It's the self. The self saying, well, let me come to your defense real quick because I could give him a piece of my mind, or I can return the favor, right? I could just treat him the exact same way he or she's treating me. And so the self always wants to jump out in front. That's where self-control comes into play. You see it now? So now self-control is going to come into play because whatever we're going through, that's self. He always going to want to be satisfied. And so we got to learn how to put the self in subjection. Look at 2 John 6. 2 John 6, there is no chapter 1 or 2. It's just one chapter. 2 John 6.
And this is love,
What's love?
that we walk after his commandments.
Ooh. Wow, that's hard, ain't it? Wow. This is love. Yeah, because if you love him,
You'll keep his commandments.
Right, you're going to keep his commandments. Ain't no need to disobey him. Right? Wow. So it's not just our behavior, but it's actually our conduct, our talk, and our behavior together. Right? The same way that we talk, because what we're living, but we're also thinking, talking, and acting. Right? And so mankind does not see our thoughts, but God knows our thoughts. God knows the intents of your heart. Man hears what you say, and man sees what you do. Right? All right, so let's make sure that we're on the right. Look at 1 John 3 and 10.
Now we can tell who are children of God and who are children of the devil.
How?
Anyone who does not live righteously and does not love other believers does not belong to God.
Ooh. When you read that, when you look at that mirror right there, what's the reflection that you see? Do you really see some adjustments that need to be made? When you're looking at that mirror, when you're looking right there at that verse itself, 1 John 3 and 10, when you look there, do you see yourself? Do you really see, oh, I need to make some adjustment? Some things just ain't right with what I'm seeing. Or do you already just look at it and say, oh, I'm good to go. I know I'm in the right category. Truth be told, we probably all need some work. Because we ain't all there yet. Right?
That's right.
Because if we say that we don't have any flaws or have any sins,
You lie.
we lie. And the truth ain't in us.
That's right.
Right? So let's just admit it now, that when we look at the scriptures and we are Judgment Day honest, man, I got some stuff to do still. And a whole lot, right? So, righteous acts are loving acts. You can't be righteous and walking according to the ways of the devil. You can only be righteous if you're walking according to the ways of God. And so, look at what 1 John 4, 7 and 8 says.
Beloved,
Uh-huh.
let us love one another.
Uh-huh. Where does love come from?
For love is God,
Uh-huh.
and everyone that loveth is born of God,
Right?
and knoweth God. He that loveth knoweth not God. Now he that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love.
Ooh. So if I'm not, you mean if I'm not one of God's children, I don't have love, right? Now look at what that is saying now. This is not saying that I can't love my mother if I'm not a Christian. And that's what we're looking at here, because this is actually the highest form of love that it's talking about, the agape love. You ain't gonna have that. But you have to have the other types of love as well. That's necessary. Remember we were talking about those? You have like eros. You know that? You hear that word? Erotic. That's a form of love. So eros love. That's that passionate love. You got that filial love. Huh? Uh-huh. That's that brotherly love. That's what he's talking about, right? Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. You have that estorge. That's that kind of familial type of love. The love like a mother would have for her child. That type of love. And you have that agape love, type of love God has for us. And that's why Jesus is saying that's the standard. That's the love you need to try to attain. Because if you don't have that type of love, yeah, I could love him. I could say, like, you know what? This is my blood brother, and I'll do anything for my blood brother. That don't prove that I'm a Christian. You see what I'm saying? But now when I start having that type of love for the body of believers, I'm going to learn to do a couple of things. Then I'm going to learn to adopt and even adapt to that servant leadership that Jesus conformed to. You remember, it is the one who submits himself to that servant type attitude or that servantile behavior. That's the one that's considered greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So when we can understand that we need to put ourselves beneath others and put others above ourselves and look out for the needs of others above the needs of our own, that means just like a slave actually look out for the needs of the slave master before even attending to their own needs. And truth be told, some of us, we're on the job and we have to make sure that we satisfy the employer's mandate before we even satisfy our own. Because we got to eat when the employer tells us it's time to go to lunch, right? We don't just get up and just say, okay, well, I'm doing whatever I want to. I'm going to come to work whenever I want to. So we still got to adapt to some of that stuff. All right, look at verse 12 in the same book. Verse 12, same 1 John. Look down at verse 12. No one has seen God at any time, but if we do what?
Love one another.
Love one another, right? Go ahead.
God dwelleth in us,
Mm-hmm.
and his love is perfect in us.
Right. If we love one another, God dwells in us. Remember we were talking about the Holy Spirit? And one of the things that we talked about was that God dwells in us, right? So if God dwells in us, and God is love, then love should be in us. So then now if you're not showing love, then God, where is God?
Not in you. Not in us.
So now we see why we're called now to try to love more. Because the more we're loving, it means now to the world that it's the more God is in us. And now the more God is in you, is the less you'll actually be drawn to sin. So love more, you're going to sin less. You getting it? Is it making sense?
You know, Brother Morris, that's
Go ahead.
a work. I mean,
Huh?
that is truly a work. That is an individual work.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the thing, everybody is not so easy to love. And you are not so easy to love by other people. I mean, you know, it could go both ways. That's what I'm saying to you. And I'm saying that...
Who's talking? Is that Sister Ellaby, the child of God, or is that Sister Ellaby, the physical person?
Both. I mean,
It's the student talking.
Okay.
but it is a work because it's not something that easily comes on us.
Right.
We have to really truly get in God's word and really apply that word in us to love every single person.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, brother, you know, people can approach you wrong.
Mm-hmm.
People can do you wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to learn to hate that sin that person has done to us, but still love them as an individual. That's a work. And not only that, it takes maturity.
Now you understand why they say that love is an action word?
Yeah.
Because it does take work, right? It's not something that's static.
Yeah.
And now, as we were talking before, if you as the person say that it is hard and it takes a lot of work, and Jesus is saying, look, I came, I left my home on high, royalty, and now I came to earth in a subservient manner, and now I have taken blows for you,
Yeah.
knowing that good and well I didn't do anything.
Right.
I was even accused falsely. I was even given, I see your hand, I was even, tried, crucified, and all of that stuff, just for you. Have my good name and my reputation sullied, telling me as the Son of God that you working for the devil, your sworn enemy,
Right.
and you
Falsely accused. Right.
accused of blasphemy and everything. And Jesus says, Father, still forgive them, for they know what they do. And here it is that Jesus is saying, I still love you, even though you come in to me to arrest me, being led by Judas, and now Peter cut off your servant's ear. I still have enough love and compassion in me to say, put your ear back on, Malchus. Here you go.
And we don't have that power, but we do love the sinner, not the sin.
Right, we don't have that power to put nobody's ear back on. But what I'm saying is, the same way Jesus didn't say, you know what, let me go ahead now and just cast judgment on you right away. He still continued to love those people.
That's true.
He still continued to love them.
And we are no better than, the servants are no better than their master. I really do honestly understand that, and I get that, but I've had to work to get to that, to where I am now. It hasn't always been easy for me.
So, right, I got you. So now again, when I said, when you go back to 1 John 3 and 10, and now you're seeing like, wait a minute, that's all I was asking. When we read this, do we really see that we have work to do? Because we ain't there yet.
That's right.
We haven't even scratched the surface. Go ahead, make your comment.
I was just thinking, along with what Sister Ellaby is saying, when we really think about it, and we was told to go out into the world and preach, and we're also being told that we have to love like God loves and stuff. And like she said, it's really a hard, for us as human beings, it's really hard to do, because, I'm just going to go from myself. I tend to stick close to family and showing any kind of emotional, anything, caring for them. And then the next out of family is close friends. In other words, I don't have too much attachment to anybody else. I don't really try to spread my technicals out there or whatever. But I'm told that when I see that person on the street, wherever, I'm supposed to love them just as if I love myself, and treat them as if I would treat myself. And if we all remember that, that person on the street that we meet, that we don't know their name, we don't know nothing about them, but when we see them, the same thing. You go out to eat lobster, you feed them lobster. You go out to, you understand what I'm saying? If you treat that person just as if it was you, if everybody you meet, you say that's me that I'm meeting, and you treat them with that same love, kindness, and whatever it is that you would do for yourself. And if we measure ourselves by that, everyone you meet is you that you're meeting, and you're treating them that way, I think that will help us be one step closer to that agape love that we're supposed to be showing one to another. So that we don't, I know we tend to, the household of, faith first and then outside, but if everybody you meet, you treat them as if it was you that you're meeting, I think we'd be one step closer. That's that love.
So if I could make a proclamation now, so from now on, whenever we're going out to eat, then we need to go to McDonald's from McDonald's. So like whatever we eat, they can eat. She wanted to give them the whole lobster.
So you're not going to be eating lobster and stuff.
It may be ramen noodles, crackers, and no, but it is right. It is right. It is right. So, and it's not so much that you're starting only in the church first. But what happened is that those in the household of faith do get preferential treatment.
But that's the thing, sometimes in the household of faith, it's not that it has to be that way too. But household of faith sometimes gets kind of lost in that. And I think that's for whatever reason. It might be personal pride or personal integrity or too proud, too something. But we have to submit to the will of God, and the will of God says for us to respect one another and love one another,
right,
and treat one another well, and give the other person the time to adjust, because we all adjust. We are all in the process.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, you want to tell a person you love them, but if they just all they got for you is something, you can't even kind of get around to that. Say, I love you. Yeah. In spite of all that,
Maybe you give him a hug at the same time they talk. She wanted to give him the whole lobster. All the comments and everything that has been said so far has really been on the money. But here is something. If you don't really hear anything that I'm actually saying so far, but ignorance Ignorance takes us to a lot of problems. Ignorance gets us in a lot of trouble. Pride keeps us there. Ignorance can get you in trouble, but pride will keep you in trouble. And that's one of the reasons why God hates the proud look. Because it takes a lot to say, I am wrong. It takes a lot for you to actually say, I am living in sin. But when you continue to think that you're not living in sin, or you continue to think that your sinful way is right, it really shows how proud you are. God, you're wrong, I'm right. And when we don't have that love, and we think that God should be pleased with whatever it is that we're putting forth, we also have a problem. Because we can always do more.
And just to add to that, is the fact that sometimes you're so much a Christian that you don't know, or I don't want to say you don't know, because sometimes people do know, that you are sinning. And that's why there is no big sin, little sin, but sin is sin, no matter what it is. Your thoughts, your attitude, your behavior could all be sin. For those of us that say that we're a Christian, because I'm guilty of it, you look up someone else and you see their sin and you say, oh, they're a sinner. But your thoughts is a sin. And even though you may not have said anything out there or whatever, that is your behavior. And that's why I always say we need to look at ourselves. We need to always check ourselves, because when you're quick to judge others, you're quick to that thing, that beam in your eye. There's not one of us in here that do not have a beam in our eye reference to something. We all sin, but we're quick to look at what others do and judge them on it.
Yeah.
And that narrow road, that's the road that is narrow for a reason, because we're not all going to be on it. And I know this is to help us so we can be on that narrow road. So we all need to be looking at each other. And everything I say because I'm always checking myself at the door. So I check myself first before I check anyone else. I just want y'all to know that.
Everybody else sin, we just make mistakes.
No, that's not true.
No? But, you sure?
Yeah, everybody.
Wow, because sometimes we don't say. Brother Strickland has been up for a while.
I like this part of the Bible in Matthew 5, 43 and 44. He said, ye have heard that it has been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thy enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, and do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. That's not easily done.
Right.
That's
Right.
not easy. I read it. I have, read this many times. This is a powerful verse about love.
That's why the thing that I was saying earlier about Jesus.
Yeah.
Knowing good and well that these people, because when you actually look at that, you can see Jesus right there.
Right. Yeah.
You can see him. And that's exactly what he's saying. So if I want to be like him, man, we have to do a lot of self. We have to kill that self a lot.
Yeah.
Be hard to kill. We gotta.
We can kill it.
Sure can.
Yeah. When you kill him, tell me how, so I can kill him too. Because he just keeps coming. But Sister Strickland and you, Brother Thomason.
Well, another thing is too, sometimes we forget that we have been in the same position that person has been in. Or we've seen our relatives in, or there's an understanding that comes when you go through some things in life. You can't assume what people have gone through. You don't know what people have gone through. People don't tell you what they go through. But a lot of people are going through stuff, they're not telling you, and they still trying to love you, and they still trying to, but you don't have to assume that this and that, because you never know what people are doing. You never know what they're going through. You never know what they went through.
That's why we shouldn't judge them at all.
That's right. Get a relationship with them, and then you'll get a little bit of understanding about things, and you won't be so. And I have been through this myself. And so I know when people get all out of sorts, I got to look back. The Lord faced all kinds of things that you named earlier, all of those things. Yet he still loved us. And so that's our example. We got to love people in spite of the stuff they're doing. We have to find good in people, in spite of what we don't like about them.
You know, so does that mean then that you got to kill, love those that are considered terrorists who are supposed to be trying to kill us? Yeah. Does that mean then that you got to love all those others who practice a different religion?
They say, Father, they know not what they do. Forgive them. They know not
So I'm not saying to quote it. I'm just saying, do we have to love them?
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta love them too. They don't. Yeah, the same ones who actually will come to you and say, "I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God, but I'm hungry." Show some compassion there too.
I got one of them.
Yeah. See, go ahead, Brother Thompson. Still gotta love.
You know, we say you love the person,
But
but
hate to see.
but hate the sin. And in love, you try to go to that person because of that motive in our eyes, try to correct them. We say we do it in love, but in reality, we're judging, as it's been stated a while ago. So we don't get past the sin when we see that individual.
It's all about motive.
And then we go right back and say, for him to know it to do good and do it is not, we're right back at sin. And then we often go to judge righteous judgment, but the carnal person, man that is in us, don't allow us to judge righteously, even though we have the scripture to use. We misinterpret the scriptures for our own self-righteousness.
All about motive.
So once again, the love is out of it.
Right.
So we're going to have to be very, very careful. And you hear Cecilia say, we're a work in progress. It's something that we're constantly going to have to work at to get past self. We have got to get past self.
Sometimes the actions don't align with the heart.
Right.
And so the actions are really because you're trying to fulfill a particular motive. And that's the same thing that Jesus was actually saying. You know what? Some do their righteous deeds just to be seen by others. That wrong motive. So if it's not motivated because of your deep love for God, and the Bible is telling us all these things, that unless you are aligned with God and connected to God, then everything else is really going to be for the wrong motive. It's going to be for the wrong motive. No matter how you try to justify it. No matter how much you say, like, you know what, just like the rich young ruler, all these things I've kept from my youth. But now when I'm actually calling you to make sure that your motive, your actions are actually lining up with your heart. Because if your heart is in it, you wouldn't have a problem looking out for the poor by getting rid of some of your possessions. Not saying that, hey, you know what, God can replace it. He replaced Job's possession. He can replace yours. Go ahead again, and then we're going to move on to the next.
Well, we can get past that. We can get past that by, remember where it says, every man did what was right in his own eyes?
In the judgment.
And then how can I know what if I don't know? If someone doesn't teach me. And that getting into the Word of God, understanding what He says, and looking at the example that Christ gave us, we can exercise that when we're calm and peaceful. We can exercise that when we have meditated over the Word. But it's a work in progress, and we have to keep working at that. And the older we get and the more experiences we have, the more we'll understand how to do it.
You said something, and then I'm going to just add to it, then we're going to move on to the next. Because we're still going to be in 1 John 4, going down to verse 20 and 21. So you could get there, and then I'll just say this. Actually, in the church, we actually have some, it's a teaching process. Right? Older men were supposed to do what to the younger men. So if I'm actually showing that particular behavior, that love, that attitude, guess what the younger men are probably doing? Learning from what I'm doing. But if I'm constantly tripping over my feet and setting a bad example, what do you think I'm going to be teaching the future generations? Right, and so that's why everybody is going to do what was right in their own eyes. And if you actually pay attention, you could be leading people farther and farther astray. Older women, you actually, because a lot of you in here too. So I didn't want to just single the men out so we feel bad walking out of here. You also have some teaching, because you got to teach the younger women. All right. So everybody got their marching orders, right? So in 1 John 4 and 20 and 21, it actually conclude with these two verses here that tell us about, and look, you can't be claiming one thing and your actions doing something totally different. There's absolutely no way you can love God or claim you love God and hate your brother or sister. You see that right there? All right. And who did he say? He says in verse, he says what now? Because you can't love God that you haven't seen, and so that you hate your brother whom you've seen. And this commandment we have from him. From him who? God. Right. That he who loves God must love his brother also. All right.
So it's not a choice.
You ain't have a choice.
Not nerd.
Right. So on your next slide now, slide number 9.
Before you go there.
Go ahead.
I'm still trying to figure out what love is. Now let me clarify.
Okay.
When I met Sylvia, I didn't love her, I don't guess. I know I was the flesh. I loved her.
Brother Thompson, you might. We have to talk offline on that one. Yeah, you don't want to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what love really.
Yeah, the Bible tells you that.
I know God is love. But what is love?
That type of love,
Okay,
I think,
good.
Compassion love.
When you actually, again, like I said, God is love, because that's the very description of love. So then when you look at love, and you have to look at God and look at the attributes of God, because to try to describe love in one word or one sentence is impossible. It's impossible. So when you actually look at it, oh my goodness, what can you actually say about God? Man, we'll be here we'll be here forever talking about all the good qualities of God. And that actually shows you as nothing but love right there. There really is none. For me to actually put it, that's why, remember even on Sunday when I was actually saying that when they actually talk about God, God was the indescribable. The name of God was the indescribable name. You couldn't describe it, just like you can't describe love. It's hard for you to describe love, but you have an example of love to follow. If you just say love is good, you won't be wrong. If you just say love is right, you won't be wrong. Yeah, I mean, if you say love is compassion, you won't be wrong. If you say love is kindness, you won't be wrong. That's why love is the superseding.
It's all of that.
It encompasses everything and more.
Sure.
And Christ left us that example about love, because
Right.
in loving, he's teaching us on how to treat one another.
Right. When you look at it, it's telling you love will determine how you treat somebody. Love will determine how you talk to somebody. Love will determine how you respond to any kind of stimulus in your surroundings. Love will determine your relationship with God. Love itself will determine how strong your faith in God is. Love in itself will even determine your availability. Love in itself is actually going to determine all the kind acts that you're doing. Love is what does it.
And it's going to include forgiveness.
It's going to include all of that, because if you ain't love him, you ain't going to forgive him.
Yeah, you got to be peaceful.
Yeah.
Willing to keep peace. It's a whole lot of stuff. It's a whole lot.
So when you look at it, it ain't just a one sentence, or it ain't just like a one paragraph. Man, you could try to write something on love, the whole, man. Anyway, on the next slide, it actually said the goal of love. Look at the goal of love. John 3 and 16. A lot of times we love to go to John 3 and 16. For God so loved the world. He so loved the world that he did what? So he gave you his best. So even if we were to say love is giving your best, would we be wrong? Nope, because that's exactly what it says. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Why did he give his only begotten son? Because he doesn't want anybody to perish. See that? Because God's desire is for all mankind, all humanity to be saved. That's God's desire. That's God's desire. But that's not saying that's what's going to happen. See what I'm saying? Right. So that's God's desire. Now listen to why I said that's God's desire. Not willing that anyone, that's his desire. Because God is already all-knowing.
And he also has the heaven and hell.
He has the heaven and the hell to place you
He
in.
has the power to do all that.
Yeah.
So we don't have that. We don't have a heaven or hell to do anything.
Right. We may have an oven, but that still ain't going to get that hot.
But we have to submit to God if we
Mhm.
want to get to that heaven.
Yeah.
Or that. Not to me. Go ahead.
So, I see you have a puzzle look on.
I just sit here and I just think about who I am and myself, and there's people that I don't click with and I don't care for, and I don't like the way they act or talk, and I don't bother those folks. When I listen to her saying, well, you got to have a relationship and all of this love that's supposed to come out, but I'm thinking, how in the world do you love some of these people that you actually say, well, I love you as a human being, but I can't stand you? I mean, you ain't never heard anybody say that?
Yeah.
Christ gave us the example.
Yeah. But you know what?
The Bible makes it plain.
Everybody, you may not, because we're human. You got that? But, you know what? We got to strive. We got to try. And that's what makes it so challenging. That's why I say all the time, Christianity itself is not a cakewalk. So if someone tried to tell you that, man, it's easy being a Christian,
No, it's not.
you may need to take a few steps back. Because it is hard work trying to be a Christian.
And I also believe that love will eliminate those things that would bother the spirit part of man. If we truly put love in our lives.
Now when we go back
to...
to...
You tell me to love my enemy.
True.
So now, if I love my enemy...
Then you eliminate that.
I don't have no problem with it.
Right. You may... Now look at it now. The Bible is giving you a command. Whether or not that person loves you, that's going to be on him.
Yeah.
That's like when you go into the book of Romans and say, if you continue to do good, then all you're going to do is heap coals of fire on the head of that person.
Mm-hmm.
You keep doing your good thing. You keep loving. If they want to hate you, let them hate you. People hated Jesus, but Jesus didn't return hatred for hatred.
Right.
He still overcome evil with good. He was, and that's what he's asking you to do. He's saying, you know what, you need to work too so that you can become strong. Exercise daily. So one of our, a lot of us suffer from spiritual atrophy. That's just a medical term where the muscles get weak because you don't use the muscles and they waste away. And so a lot of us, our faith is wasting away. Why? Because we're not keeping ourselves fit in the Word of God. We're not exercising in the Word of God. And so we're only getting our word when we come together like this. But if you actually take the time, that's how we're actually going to be able to adjust our lives. Because whenever you read, that's why I was asking that question at first, like when you read this, when you're actually looking in this mirror and the word tells you, well, you can't love God and hate your brother. Man, if you don't see some stuff in there that says, I got some work to do, because there are some people that I just can't stand. You can't love God until you love your brother. So we have some stuff to do. Go ahead. And then, go ahead, and then go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Go ahead. You know what, Brother Morris?
Uh-huh. No, I don't know yet in detail.
Okay. Well, let me tell you.
Oh, go ahead.
All right. So, honestly and truthfully, it takes a lot of denying ourselves.
Ooh!
Because Luke 9:23?
If you want to follow me, you got to do what?
Deny yourself.
And do what? Take up your
Cross
Okay.
daily. And I'm going to tell you.
Why you think you got to take up the cross? Because who do you have to kill? Who you going to crucify on that cross?
Me.
The old man, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And a lot of times, that's our problem, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
Self is still in the way. We haven't
Yeah.
crucified it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Go ahead.
And I just want to mention, some people are extroverts. I am an extrovert. I'm just like
Oh,
with everybody.
yeah.
But then I look at people who are introverted and I go, well, why do they think like that? Well, why do they act like this? But I had to understand it, everybody else has to understand that. But now I'm like, hey, sometimes I'll get introverted too, because I see the rest of the world is introverted. The rest of the world I'm dealing with at the time is introverted. And so why should I be trying to be lovely and nobody else wants to be that way? It's the way I feel sometimes, but that's not true. But what I'm saying is, I have had to learn to just back off and try to understand why the person is acting like they act.
Yeah.
And sometimes people have those natural tendencies to just only look inside. They don't ever hardly ever look outside. And you gotta allow for that. And so when people who are leading people think they can make a decision for everybody, they're just wrong. That's why you have to talk with people. You just have to find out how they're thinking. Because everybody does not think the same way, and we can't assume how somebody's thinking. We have to talk to them. They might look one way, but they act in another way. And that's because that's the way they feel.
Remember now, just because I'm acting a certain way, it's not me.
What?
Just because I'm acting a certain way, it's not me.
Well, who is it?
It's who inside of me.
That's you.
Who that would be?
All right. So those individuals,
It should be bad.
classic example. Look at all those individuals that Jesus cast demons out of. Look at the description of those individuals prior to Jesus casting the demons out of them. Look at their attitudes, the behavior. And then look at the disposition after Jesus eliminated or put the evil spirit out of them. And so what I'm saying is, we are all being controlled either by a good force or an evil force. And so it's you ain't nothing more than just a lump of clay. And so who you actually give occupancy to inside of your mind is actually going to determine how you live. That's why we started off the lesson by saying the human mind is in a constant struggle between good and evil. So if you give God room in your life, you're going to love more. If you give the devil room in your life, you're going to sin more. So our goal is really to get more of God so we can actually act like God. See that? And the last one we actually look at before we close it up, I think we're doing good. What do y'all think? All right, so look at 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and look at the whole goal here. We talked about this before in John 3 and 16, tell you what the goal is. And God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And now look why God is doing all of this, because God had a plan. And he didn't just have this plan, he didn't just think of it yesterday. So 2 Corinthians 5, 17 through 21.
Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature.
Ooh.
Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. And all things are of God, who have reconciled us to himself by Jesus Christ, and have given to us the
So hold on a minute. He has reconciled us to himself by Jesus Christ. So when he gave his only begotten son, it was for what purpose? Reconciliation. See that? So he gave us Christ, John 3:16, for reconciliation. So go ahead, read the rest of it.
and have given to us the ministry of reconciliation. To wit, that God was in Christ, reconciling the world unto himself, not imputing their trespasses unto them, and have committed unto us the word of reconciliation. Now then, we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God did beseech you by us. We pray you in Christ's stead, be ye reconciled to God. And 21.
Yeah.
For he hath made him to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him.
Yeah. So from before the very foundation of the world, God knows that whatever Satan corrupted, only Christ himself can repair, or can repair. And so Christ is our reconciliation agent, or reconciling agent to God. The death of Christ. Isaiah said that he's borne our grief, right? And all the sins of the world was placed on him. Wow, that's heavy. You think that, even look at how the writer of Hebrews actually described it, like you have to lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily beset you, right? That weigh you down and trip you up. You think the sin is heavy on you, and Jesus bore the sins of the whole world on himself. And he didn't have no sin. It's a lot of weight. If you say, I can't deal with you and your problems right now because you're wearing me down, and that's just one person wearing you down, what happened when it's 100 people? Must be even heavier, right? Jesus bore it all.
He bore it all. See it shine.